There is a 26-year-old man standing in a gravel driveway in rural Ohio, holding a set of keys that are older than his own existence. The car in front of him was built 19 years before he was born. Its paint has faded to a color that doesn't have a name anymore. Its odometer rolled over twice before he ever learned to read. He paid $11,000 for it last week. Money he saved for 2 years while driving a perfectly reliable 2019 sedan that started every morning without complaint. He sold that sedan. He has no regrets. Tonight he will spend 4 hours under this car's hood, not because it's broken, but because he wants to understand every single part of something that existed before he did. His roommate thinks he's lost his mind. His father, who actually owned a car like this one back when it was new, doesn't understand it either. To him, it's just an old car. To his son, it's something else entirely. And once you understand what that something else actually is, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In driveways, at car shows, in the way certain people talk about machines built decades before their own birth certificate was signed. Let's start with the part almost nobody gets right. People assume this is about nostalgia. It is not. You cannot be nostalgic for a time you never lived through. A 26-year-old has no memory of 1998. He has no childhood attached to that dashboard, no formative Saturday spent in that passenger seat. So if it isn't nostalgia, what is actually happening inside someone who chooses a machine older than themselves? Psychologists have a term for this, and it comes from a completely different field than you'd expect. It's called acquired nostalgia, or sometimes anemoia, a longing for a time you never personally experienced. This isn't some fringe theory. Research on collective memory shows that people can form genuine emotional attachments to eras they only encountered secondhand, through stories, photographs, films, or objects that survived into the present. The brain doesn't actually require a personal memory to generate the warmth of nostalgia. It only requires a cultural memory, absorbed early enough and reinforced often enough that it starts to feel personal. Think about where that secondhand memory usually comes from. A grandfather's stories told at a kitchen table. A photograph of a father standing next to a car he no longer owns. A film watched a dozen times growing up, where the hero drove something with round headlights and an engine note nothing built today can replicate. None of that is the young man's own history, but it was handed to him anyway, the way a name is handed down, and somewhere along the way it became part of how he understands who he is. Here's where it gets more interesting. The cars chosen in this pattern are almost never random. They are usually from a specific window, built somewhere between 15 and 40 years before the buyer's own birth. Not ancient enough to be a museum piece, not recent enough to still be common on the road. That window matters enormously. It's old enough to represent an era the buyer has only ever experienced through stories and media, but recent enough that the cars still exist in driveways and junkyards, in the memories of people who are still alive to talk about them. It's a fully reachable past, close enough to touch, far enough to romanticize. This is what researchers call a kind of manufactured authenticity. The young buyer is not pretending to have lived through that decade. He is doing something different and arguably more interesting. He is trying to inherit a version of masculinity, competence or identity that he believes existed more purely in that era, and he is using the physical object as the vehicle, quite literally, for claiming it. Now watch what happens when you ask one of these people why they chose this specific car. They almost never say because it's a good investment or because it's reliable. They'll say something closer to, they don't build them like this anymore. Listen to that sentence carefully, because it is doing enormous psychological work. It's not really a claim about engineering. It's a claim about values. It's a quiet accusation against the present, that something has been lost, that things used to be made with more honesty, more weight, more permanence. And by owning the object from that supposedly more honest era, the buyer gets to stand a little outside the present and its disposability. This connects to something deeper that shows up constantly in young men specifically, though not exclusively. There's a documented psychological need that intensifies, in early adulthood called the search for ontological security, a stable sense of who you are in a world that feels increasingly unstable and accelerated. Most 20-somethings today grew up watching technology replace itself every 18 months. Phones, software, entire industries, all built on planned obsolescence, all designed to feel outdated by the time you've barely learned to use them. Against that backdrop, a 40-year-old car that still runs, still responds to a wrench and patience and nothing more complicated than mechanical logic, becomes something almost radical. It is evidence that permanence is possible, that something can still be the same machine it was decades ago, and still work. There's also a quieter signal buried in this behavior, one that has almost nothing to do with the car itself. People who actively choose an older car over a newer one are very often people who feel slightly out of step with their own generation, not alienated exactly but unconvinced. Unconvinced that the latest version of anything is automatically the better version. Unconvinced that newer software, newer trends, newer culture are improvements just because they're newer. This skepticism toward built-in progress shows up first in small decisions: vinyl records instead of streaming, mechanical watches instead of smart ones, manual cameras instead of phones. The old car is simply the largest, loudest, most physical expression of a worldview that already existed quietly inside them. And there's something else worth naming, honestly, because it explains why this behavior so often appears specifically in young men rather than evenly across everyone. An older car, especially one with some mechanical complexity, becomes a proving ground. It demands competence that cannot be faked. You cannot bluff your way through a carburetor that won't idle correctly. You either understand it or the car simply does not run. In a world where so much of modern masculinity is performed online, through posturing rather than demonstrated skill, the old car offers something rare, a test with a real, physical, undeniable result. Either it starts or it doesn't. Either you understood the problem or you didn't. There is no algorithm to game here, no audience to perform for. Just you, the machine, and whether your understanding was actually correct. This is why these owners so often become protective of their cars in a way that looks, from the outside, almost irrational. Offer one of them market value plus a premium and watch the hesitation. It isn't about the money, not really. Selling the car would mean giving up the proof, giving up the daily reminder that he built a kind of competence and identity that is genuinely his, earned through hours of frustration in a garage, not inherited, not purchased as a finished product. So what does it actually mean when someone chooses a car built before they existed? It means they are reaching backward to construct something they couldn't find readily available in the present. A sense of permanence, a tangible test of competence, a borrowed memory that has somehow become their own. The car was never really about transportation. It became a way of answering a question that has nothing to do with engines at all. In a world built to replace itself every 18 months, what would it feel like to own something that simply refused to become obsolete? The question worth sitting with isn't whether old cars are objectively better than new ones. It's why so many people born decades after these machines rolled off the line feel the need to go looking for something that old in the first place. Because the thing they're really restoring in that garage late at night, with grease on their hands and a manual older than their parents, might not be a car at all.